We're going to look at using Google Tag Manager for mobile apps, the Android version, and look at using the example that comes with the app. So here I've got Google Tag Manager Android, the 1.0b2 version of the SDK. I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and in it I see the jar file and then a couple text files and a zip with examples in it. So I'll open up those examples, and I see I have a single Hello World example. I'm going to go ahead and import that into Eclipse. So I'm going to choose Import and then existing Android code in a workspace. I'm going to go ahead to that directory, which is my desktop, select the SDK, and I see now my Hello World example, which I'm going to copy into my workspace. I'm not quite done once it's in the workspace. We can see I have some problems with some things that are not defined. If I look in the Libraries folder, you can see it says to copy the lib Google Tag Manager.jar into here. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So we'll go back out here, select lib Google Tag Manager.jar, and drag it into the libs directory. It's important that it be in a directory called libs. And at that point, this text file you can either leave there or delete it. It's really up to you. At this point, we can run the app. Let's go over to the emulator and look at it. And as it comes up, we'll talk about what it is. So this is a very simple application that just displays some text with a customized foreground color and background color. Okay, and as we can see here, it's white text on a magenta background. Let's look at the code that does this. So the important thing is that we have defined a default container. And this default container has in it some JSON, which contains background color of magenta and text color of white. This default container is used when there's no network container available. And in this case, the container ID is GTM-XXXX, and there is no such container defined. So it's just using the default container. If I look at the source file, we have a quick splash screen that will open again with the same container ID. And what it does is when the splash screen is created, it goes ahead and gets the tag manager and then calls open non-default container, passing in the container ID and the timeout, which in our case is 2 seconds or 2000 milliseconds. When the container is available, either by loading the default container from the JSON, or if it were to go to the network and get one, if there were a real container ID, then the notifier will be called. And in our case, what we do is go ahead and save that container and then start our main activity. So we've got the splash screen activity that's just there for this up to 2 seconds. If there's no container available within 2 seconds, then you'll just get an empty container. Okay. If we go back to the application, we can see as well there's a simple get color that will just go ahead and read the current colors from the container and actually also display them in the dialog and then refresh. Notice when we click refresh, we're actually getting errors in the ADB log, and the reason is here. No data is retrieved from the given URL. Make sure GTM-XXX is correct. It turns out I do have a container predefined that goes ahead and provides values for the background color and the text color. So let's go ahead and use that container. Okay, so I'm going to rename this and to do that there we go. So I'm going to name it GTM-QRGM because that's my actual container ID. And then I've also got to change the source code and change the container ID to the same value. So this time, it's going to still be looking for the default container, qrgm.json, but then it'll also go to the network. So let's run this. Okay, go back over to the emulator. And what we should find now is some different values, because in fact what we've defined in the GTM UI is to have white text on a red background. That's all really for the very initial demo, and this just shows that things are working. We'll have other videos that show how to use the GTM UI, somewhat more about the splash screen and other aspects.